Microsoft Flight Simulator just launched and we're all very eager to get started, but none of it matters if you don't know where to start. Today I'm going to show you how to get started in the XCub, the perfect beginner bush plane that'll take you on many adventures throughout the life of Microsoft Flight Simulator. First, get to this screen, click on the world map. Once you get to the world map, come up to the top and select the aircraft. This is going to be a traditional propeller aircraft, so click on the propeller option and then come down here to the Cub Crafter XCub. This airplane is capable of 126 knots, a max altitude of 14,000 feet, a 6-hour endurance, and a 695 nautical mile range. After you've selected the aircraft, you can actually come over here to weight and balance. If you're going to go a long way, make sure you give yourself a little bit more gas to do it. Today we're just taking a short flight. 50% gas should be perfectly fine. And we're accounting for a pilot, some rear passengers, and 80 pounds worth of baggage. Once you're happy with all of that, go ahead and click escape, then locate a place to fly. I didn't have a place in mind, although the sun's coming up in California and we're just trying to take a little trip. This is perfect. Let's start here in Reno. And we can arrive to Reno International. Yeah, let's go further south. We'll take like a 20 nautical mile trip. So there's Reno, there's Carson City. There we go. All right, so set your departure airfield and your arrival airfield. After you've selected them, you go to the top and you can see we're going to be departing from runway 26. For the purposes of today's little tutorial, we're actually going to change that to a ramp so we can talk through startup procedures. Zoom all the way into the airfield. I don't want to taxi too far, so I'm going to take ramp 40. And then once we arrive to Minden, Tahoe, they have us coming in for runway 16, it looks like. Okay, so that's perfect. Straight in approach to Midland, Tahoe. For the purposes of the Cub Crafter X, it's usually best to go VFR Direct, but you do have some other navigation options. To get started, I would highly recommend just sticking with the VFR Direct. This just means you're going to turn on the GPS on the airplane, and that's what you're going to be using to navigate all the way to your destination. After you've selected your departure and your arrival airport, keeping in mind that in this case we've selected gate 40, which means we'll be departing from parking and our airplane will be turned off. You can open the nav log and then see what the computer has asked you to do. So we are taking off from an altitude of 5,033 feet. That's just where that airport is above sea level. You can see over here that is at ground level. We're going to be climbing to an altitude of 7,500 feet, which is totally reasonable, and we'll begin our descent at 7,500 feet back to a ground level of 4,700 feet above sea level before arrival. If you'd like to adjust your cruising altitude, you can go up here and do exactly that. But at this point, I'm satisfied with the cruising altitude, and I think we are ready to get started. Once you're ready to go, click fly. When you spawn into the game, you'll get this nice cinematic view of the airfield that you're going to be departing from. The sun is coming up over California, and we have an absolutely gorgeous shot of the ramp and the runway. Once you've enjoyed the scene for a moment, click ready to find yourself in the cockpit. Now that we're in the cockpit, you can see my head moving around. That's just because I have Track IR enabled on my headset, and I'm able to look around the cockpit, which is a super cool thing to do. If you're interested in looking into head tracking software, I highly recommend Track IR, or what I use is called Delin Clip Fusion. A link to that is in the description below. To get started with any airplane, once you're sitting in the cockpit, all you need to do is come up to this little icon at the top of the screen, go over here to the checklists. Where's the checklist? There we go. Come over here to the checklist option. You can put this on an extra monitor by clicking the pop-out window, which turns it into just your traditional Windows pop-out window. But for today, I'll leave it on screen, not on my additional monitor, so that we can all enjoy it together. And this is going to walk you through how to start the airplane, and it's a great way to learn the cold start procedures. So in order to start the engine, we need to make sure our parking brake is set. Mine is set. I'll confirm that by clicking this, which will point my head at the parking brake. Indeed, the parking brake is set. After I'm done and I'm convinced that the parking brake is in fact set, you can click Tick Item, which will check it off and take you to the next one. Next, fuel selector to the fullest tank. Let's take a look. So right now it's on the left tank. It looks like I have a left and a right tank. To see which one is the fullest, my fuel tanks are actually right back here. So you can see that one's sitting right there. This fuel tank is in the same spot. So in reality, no big deal here. They are about the same. We've now completed our pre-start procedures. Next, we're going to go to the engine start procedure. So I click the arrow, it's taking us over to the engine start procedures. First thing we're going to do is make sure the battery switch is turned on. Click the eyeball and turn on the battery switch. That's going to bring up all of our avionics. All right, the next thing we're going to do is make sure that our mixture is set to rich. This just means that we're going to make sure there's excess gasoline that is being burned when we start the aircraft. So we'll go ahead and set this to a rich mixture. I think like a 77% is pretty rich. Next, we'll go to the ignition switches and we'll flip them on. This is going to start getting the airplane going. Tick them off when we're satisfied. Alternator field also on. Tick that as we go. Propeller speed control lever, max RPMs. So we'll crank that all the way up. Go ahead and tick that. Throttle. We're going to move him forward to a 1/4 inch. That's about right there. Perfect. Starter. Let's hear her crank. And you can see my RPMs spike and then level. Perfect. All right, now we're going to adjust the throttle to 1000 RPMs to make sure we're getting lots of oil and gas through the ignition. So I'm looking at this indicator right here, and I'm just manipulating my own throttle here on the aircraft. Beautiful. Tick that item. Oil pressure, check. Oil pressure is in the green. So I'm looking here. Oil temp, oil pressure, both in the green. Good to go. We are done starting the engine. Now, after you're done starting the engine, click over to the next one. Lights as required. Sun's coming up. I'm not super worried about it. I'm not going to turn on my lights for now. We'll have taxi lights on, but that's it. We'll take that off. Avionics master switch is on. So we're going to be able to get our avionics working correctly. Parking brake release, and then we are going to begin our travel. So that is where we are at today. All right, last thing we're going to do is release the parking brake. We'll do that in just a second. Once you're satisfied with all of this, you can get back to a traditional cockpit screen by hitting Control plus space. That'll reset your view and you will be prepared to taxi. I'm going to bring this up just a little bit. That's good right there. Perfect. All right, next thing we're going to do is bring up our VFR map. So you can see, because right here on our navigation screen, that we plugged in those coordinates during our mission planning phase. This is a nice, easy to use touchscreen. All you have to do is click that minus button and you'll be able to zoom out, see Lake Tahoe, see our full flight plan all the way to our destination, and even see some live AI traffic there, which is pretty neat. To center back up on the airplane anytime, all you have to do is click that button and then zoom back in. You see where we're located? We're going to end up needing to turn around, and I believe we requested a northbound departure, so we're going to request to taxi to runway 32 for a northbound departure. In order to request that taxi, you're gonna have to bring up your comms menu. To bring up the comms menu, come up to the top here, come to this arrow screen, and then come over to ATC. Plop that out. Same thing here, guys. You're able to break this out and put it on an additional screen if you'd like to. No need right now. First thing we're gonna do is tune to the traffic of the airfield that we're on right now. And because this is not an actively ATC'd runway, all we have to do is announce our intent to departure. So right now we're going to announce that we're taxiing, we're going to taxi to our runway, and then we'll depart from that runway.
Kilo Romeo Tango Sierra Traffic Cub Crafters Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra is taxiing to runway 26.
All right, so I've disengaged the parking brake. We're told to taxi to runway 26. Looking at the map, I don't know where runway 26 is. That's okay. I'm going to move the throttle up. My parking brake has been disengaged here, so we're going to start moving. And then in order to steer your airplane, all you got to do is manipulate the throttle, all you have to do is manipulate the rudder to the left and to the right. These yellow painted lines on the airfield, those are our taxiways. So we're using those as navigation aids. All right, so one of the ways that you can navigate around an airfield is to look at the signage. And right here we can see we're headed towards runway 32 via Alpha Taxiway. And that is runway 32 beginning right there. So that is not the runway we intended to depart. So we're gonna have to switch that over. So now that we've arrived at runway 32, we're gonna click runway 32, announce that we are taxiing to runway 32.
Crafters Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra is taxiing to runway 32.
Now we're going to announce that we're going to take off by departing straight out.
Cub Crafters Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra taking off runway 32 straight out departure.
Make sure that our flaps are set appropriately. So for takeoff, you just need a little bit of flaps in most of these aircraft. If we come out here and take a look. Takeoff flaps about 10-20%. This thing generates a ton of lift, so it'll be perfectly fine. My brakes are still applied. I'm going to go ahead and throttle up. Brakes are still applied, brakes are still applied, and coming off brakes. I'm gonna start rolling. I'm gonna use my rudder to keep me aligned center as best I can. If there's any wind at all, the Cub Crafter does tend to blow around a lot. Plenty of speed. This is a massive runway, far larger than this thing needs. We are wheels up. Now we know we need to turn south. So I'm going to go ahead and give this thing lots of gas, continue climbing with a plan of turning south with a right-hand turn east. And then orienting on our next steer point. And as we are now clear of the runway, we'll go ahead and make sure that other pilots in the area are aware of that by announcing it. So again, we'll come back to the ATC. Interestingly, that option has already disappeared off of the screen. So I can't even announce that I'm clear, but that's okay. We won't need comms then until we approach our destination airfield. All right, let's talk about navigation. So remember, our cruising altitude was 7,500 feet. I'm going to achieve that by maintaining a 5-degree climb. You can see the HUD right here. If I keep my steer point right on that 5-degree mark, I'm going to continue to climb. My airspeed's at 73 knots and climbing. So remember, we had that rich mixture. We can go ahead and back that guy off now too. So if we need to head southbound, we're going to continue climbing at that same 5-degree mark until our altimeter reads 7,500. Once we achieve 7,500 and we have gotten onto our course, I'm going to activate autopilot to assist us in getting to our destination. Something I failed to do earlier that we're feeling the effects of now is raise the flaps after we took off. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. See the plane kind of relax. It's good. All right, we're approaching our steer point here. My RPM's flashing red. That's just because I had it maxed out. You can tell we're approaching our steer point, and so I'm going to turn left and put us on the appropriate flight path. And now that we are flying on that pretty straight line generated by our GPS, let's talk about some symbology on the aircraft. I've pressed the V key to bring up the VFR map. We know that this airplane needs to be on this line and traveling south to get to our destination. If you don't want to use the VFR map to do that, you can navigate to your avionics down here, and you see the aircraft is indicated by this icon right here in the center. And we want to make sure that the aircraft is pointed in line with that bearing, a course of 157 degrees on the compass rose. And we also are being told that our airplane is too far to the right of its flight path because this center line here is not in line with the rest of the line there on that compass rose. So we're flying east now in order to get this line completely straight in line with the rest of the symbology there on the HUD. And as we're able to achieve that, you can see it's naturally kind of drifting towards centerline. As it continues to drift towards centerline, we're going to gently turn onto course. We've almost got it in line. We're still a little bit left. All right, there we go. We've got it pretty much perfectly in line. We now need to be flying a course of 157 degrees as indicated here. Right now we're flying a 150, so I'm coming right, putting this thing in line. And almost there. Good. Alright, so now we are headed straight for our airfield that we plan to land on. Everything is looking good. If you've noticed, we've climbed up to 8,500 feet while I've been talking. Part of that is because I haven't taken the opportunity to set trim. Setting the trim is going to trim your aircraft to make sure that it doesn't climb too much or sink too much as you navigate based off of the conditions outside of the airplane and based off the speed that you are flying. So right now, I need to trim the aircraft down because the nose is having a tendency to rise. So I'm going to come down to my vertical speed indicator, and I'm going to decrease my vertical speed by selecting the up option and give it 2 units of trim to the up position and see how that works to trim out the airplane. So I'm no longer fighting the stick. I'm letting the nose naturally sink. You can see here it is sinking indeed. And there we go. The aircraft is now right there, nice and trimmed out. All right, we are on our flight path. Next, let's activate our autopilot so that we're able to fly all the way to our destination and enjoy the sights along the way. So the autopilot in the XCub is very simple. You've got a couple options here. Clicking the level button will quickly activate straight level flight. That's going to just hold you on the course that you're pointed on. You're not going to gain any altitude. You're not going to lose any altitude. If you click that, it'll automatically also activate the AP button. So now we're flying straight and level and the autopilot is engaged. If I disengage straight and level, autopilot comes off. We'll leave straight and level activated for now. Some other options here. I can select an altitude or a heading. To synchronize my current heading, all I have to do is click this button. So my current heading is right around 160 degrees. If I click this button, you can see the autopilot heading is now also tracking 100 degrees. And then if I press the heading button, the airplane will fly 160 degrees until I tell it to do something else. But by selecting that heading button, it's also disengaged the level button. I'm going to go back to straight level flight. If I want to manipulate that heading, I can click left and click right, and you can see here my heading sinks down to 154, back up to 156. My navigation aid's telling me I need to fly a course of 157, so I'm going to select heading 157 and then activate the heading mode. And now my airplane will turn heading 157 and then hold straight and level bearing 157 until I tell it to do something else. The airplane's also got some other cool features. The navigation button is similar to heading in straight level flight. The only difference here is rather than flying a specific heading or flying straight and level, it's going to fly to your GPS waypoints. So if you really want to take your hands off the stick completely, let the airplane fly. And now that airplane is going to get perfectly on the course indicated by this pink line on your navigation aid and fly it all the way to the destination. For altitude select, it works just like heading select. We know that our original flight plan was 7,500 feet, right? So let's put this altitude select at 7,500 feet, and it'll go down to the altitude that I've selected. That's some of the basics of the XCub. If at any time you're curious of how far you can go, you can check your fuel gauges by just looking up over your shoulder. Seeing we're just over 10 or 15 here as indicated by my right fuel gauge. And on the left side, we're falling a little bit. So now that the left fuel tank has less gas in it than the right fuel tank, we're gonna wanna switch over to keep the airplane nice and balanced. So we have the left selected right now, that's why it's been burning so much. We wanna select the right fuel tank, and boom, we have done just that. That means we're gonna start draining gas from the right tank instead of the left. Something we hadn't talked about previously is our estimated time of arrival. So this is the airplane just calculating in real time based off of the inputs that you have given it what exact time it expects to arrive at its destination. So up here you can see the waypoint that we're navigating to is KMEV. That's the destination airport that we identified whenever we selected this flight path from the world map. It's at a bearing of 172 degrees. Right now we're flying a course that's going to put us in a position to approach that airfield rather than land directly on it. It's 19.7, 19.6 nautical miles from us and falling because we are flying in its direction. We're expected to arrive there in 11 minutes and 4 seconds. The XCub is a simple airplane. It is very capable, very user-friendly, very easy to learn, absolutely beautiful, and you can take it into some incredibly harsh environments or some not so harsh environments, like Reno. As we approach KMEV, I've now zoomed into that airfield. I can see that we're going to be requesting runway 16, just as we did in our flight plan. That means we're going to be flying a bearing of 160. So interestingly, the runway number in real world and of course in Microsoft Flight Simulator is indicative of its bearing. So in this case, runway 16 is runway 160 degrees. So if I'm flying a heading of 160 degrees, I'm going to find myself in line with that runway. And it's time to start making preparations for that landing, as we are only 9.8 nautical miles from it. If I look way out there, I believe our target airfield is right in there. So let's make those preparations. What we're going to do is we're going to come up here. Ooh, I'm shaking a lot. That's just some turbulence up here, I think. Nav is still enabled, so we're comfortable there. Come here to the top, open up our ATC. We'll go to our nearest airport. We're looking for KMEV. There it is. We'll tune to KMEV traffic.
Kilo Mike Echo Victor automated weather observation 1400 Zulu. Wind 249 red 8. Visibility tree. Sky condition few clouds at 900 feet, few clouds at 4,100 feet, few clouds at 12,300 feet. Temperature 20 C dew point 10 C altimeter 299 tree.
Okay, so we've got our automated weather update. Big thing there is wind is 249 at 8. We'll tune back to the traffic now. We're going to select that runway for landing. Remember we had said we're going to select runway 160. We're going to announce runway 160 for a full stop.
Kilo Mike Echo Victor Traffic Cup Crafters Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra 8 miles north, 8,000 feet inbound to land runway 16.
All right, next thing we're going to do is disengage our autopilot. We're going to set our flaps now. That's perfectly fine. I'm going to go idle throttle and start bringing this guy down, since we are only 6 miles now from the airfield, and indeed I do see runway 16 off to our front. I can't really announce that we're coming in for a straight-in landing, which I guess procedurally would be the right thing to do. So I'll wait until I'm at 3 or 4 miles, and then I'll call final. Keys for landing, guys. Man, landing this airplane is pretty simple. Getting it to the runway is actually really easy. The challenge is working the rudder on final, and then once your wheel's down, making sure it stays on the airfield. We've got 8 knot winds out of the west, it sounded like. So that's going to be a left to right wind. Or right to left wind, excuse me. So we're going to navigate all the way into the threshold of the runway. The target that we're aiming for is really the numbers, and we're going to go engine idle as we approach the airfield and just glide on in, and then gently raise the nose until we settle onto the runway right at the numbers on the center line. As soon as that we are wheels down, we're going to be manipulating the rudder to make sure that we stay on the airfield and the wind doesn't blow us off. We're also going to be activating the brakes. I have mapped my brakes to the trigger on this Thrustmaster TCA Sidestick Airbus Edition. If you're interested in looking at the same hardware that I fly with, I'm really enjoying my Thrustmaster products. I've got the T16000M, which I use for my combat flight sim in DCS World, and then I use this Thrustmaster TCA Sidestick Airbus Edition for Microsoft Flight Sim, and it has just been an absolute dream. As you can see here, we're still really high, so we're at 5,400 feet and falling. I've gone engine idle completely. My speed is at 95 knots and climbing. I'm going to give it a little bit more flaps because of that. It's going to help us slow down a little bit more. I'm aiming right at the numbers, a little right for a lineup. Giving it a little bit of power. Now we're just raising that nose very, very gently. I'm engine idle now, right on the center line. Raising the nose. Aircraft will naturally settle. she is. I'm gently giving it rudder. Not worried about making that taxiway. Gentle rudder. And working the brakes as well. Gotta be real careful with the Cub Crafter X. You give it a whole bunch of brakes when you land, you will go nose over. As soon as we are clear of the runway, we will announce that. Here's our first opportunity to get off the runway. We are taking it.
Kilo Mike Echo Victor Traffic Cub Crafters Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra is clear of the runway.
I can see the ground crew over here welcoming us with open arms. So we'll navigate right over here to our ground crew. See this nice guy? What's up, buddy? He's saying come left, come left. I'm activating brakes, giving it some rudder, giving it some speed. He's saying turn left, turn left. Nice and easy. We'll come left for you, guy. Now he's saying come at me, come right, come right. And stop. All right, now that we've arrived, the first thing that we're gonna do is set our parking brake. You can do that either by going down here behind the seat, like we saw when we did our initial startup, or you can hit Control and then period on the keyboard by default, which will activate your parking brake. After that, you're gonna go through your shutdown procedures, which interestingly for the XCub, there is no checklist for shutdown procedures. So you've kind of got to just do it the hard way. The easiest way is just to flick the master on switch to off. And then go right on down the line, turn off your ignition, turn off all of your avionics, make sure that all of your lights are set to off, your avionics master is set to off. And here we are. Last thing I'll do, because I didn't before we landed or after we landed, was fix the flaps. So that's a mechanical system, doesn't require the power. Thank you so much for joining me today. I know that you are going to love Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 and all of the adventures that the XCub by Cub Crafters will take you on. I'm Controlled Pairs. I play the most immersive PC games in the world. This is Microsoft Flight Simulator, and I'll see you in the next one.